What is going on, college basketball fans? Today we have our updated Week 14 Dannyology Power 35 rankings for college basketball. As always, we are dropping these every single Monday morning early at 7 a.m. We have these coming out every single week, and we have daily college basketball content dropping here on the channel. You don't want to miss it, so make sure you guys hit that subscribe button. Drop a like if you guys enjoy this one, and comment down below your thoughts on my Power 35 rankings. And without further ado, let's get it started. All right, so here it is. Here are my rankings for Week 14, and yet again, we have another crazy week of college basketball where a ton of ranked teams lost this week, and we're so used to it at this point. The last 3-4 weeks have just been complete chaos, but I have spent a lot of time, as I always do, figuring out where I think each of these teams should be placed, and we have a lot of new teams in that weren't in last week in this week's Power 35. So let's go ahead and break it down from the top. We have a brand new number one team, and that is the Houston Cougars. I mean, they looked amazing this week. 2 road wins at Wichita State, very hostile environment there, and at Temple. I was debating still between them and Purdue, keeping Purdue as the number one team, even though they lost on the road at Indiana. Purdue still, they played, they kind of lost that one themselves. They had double the amount of turnovers that Indiana had. They had double the amount of missed free throws that Indiana had, and they still were starting to creep back into that game at the end, and they had chances to win it still. So I do think Purdue still deserves an argument for that number one spot, and I was actually going to have Purdue at the number one spot until today. As I'm recording this on Sunday night, I saw Houston go into Temple and come out in the second half down by, I think, 3 or 4, and just completely control the entire second half. And in that second half, they looked like the best team in the country. Houston is looking really good, and right now they are not only my number one team, but I think they are my favorites to win the national championship this season. They looked so good, and they are my number one team this week. But like I said, Purdue definitely has an argument to still be the number one team, but I have them here at number 2. At number 3, we do have the Alabama Crimson Tide, and they dropped outside the top 5 for me last week, but they're back up at number 3 because they bounced back really well from that Oklahoma loss with a 57-point win over the Vanderbilt Commodores. I mean, Vanderbilt really needs to just end their basketball program now, because Alabama just had a crazy statement win against them, and they're back up here at number 3, still undefeated in SEC conference play. Dominating the SEC right now. They deserve the number 3 spot right now. At number 4, we do have the Arizona Wildcats, and Arizona, they had a really good week, a 2-0 week in a week where a lot of top teams were going down. So Arizona, they're jumping up here to the number 4 spot. At number 5, we do have the Texas Longhorns, and they had one of the best weeks out of anyone in the country this week, as they went 2-0 against Baylor at home and on the road at Kansas State. Really good week. They are now in first place in the Big 12 Conference, and I know somebody's going to say it. Yes, Tennessee did defeat Texas, but here's my thing about those head-to-heads. I do value head-to-heads a lot, and you're going to see that throughout these rankings, but whenever you're the road team and you lose, and also Tennessee just lost to Florida this week, that's not a good look. And I just, whenever the home team wins and it's a really good environment there, I try not to value it as much as a neutral site head-to-head, if that makes sense. So I do have Texas above Tennessee because they had a really good week, one of the best weeks in college basketball, like I said, and Tennessee had a week where not only did they lose to Florida, but they barely beat Auburn at home. And if it wasn't for a very bad call at the end of that game on a three-pointer shot, assuming Auburn can make 3 free throws in a row, That game's going to overtime, and who knows what would have happened in that one. Tennessee did not look good this week. They're falling from my number 2 all the way down to 6 for this week. At number 7, I do have Marquette, and Marquette, another team within the chaos, is just kind of sneaking through a little bit. Teams are dropping here, and Marquette's just sneaking in there and keep winning and are on a nice win streak. In my opinion, they're looking like the best team in the Big East. They have UConn this week. That's going to be a really good game. They're up here at number 7, and they actually beat this team bad earlier on the season, the team that's number 8, and that is the Baylor Bears. But Baylor has looked a lot better recently than they have at the beginning of the year. I mean, Baylor has been on a tear, and yes, they had a 1-1 week this week. One was a 4-point loss on the road at Texas, and they also got a really big win over Texas Tech, beat them down pretty bad. So Baylor, as of late, before that Texas loss, they were on a nice little win streak. Like, they have been very hot in the Big 12 as of late. That's why I have Baylor up here at number 8. Also because they have a head-to-head on a neutral site early in the season over my number 9 team, the UCLA Bruins. And UCLA, 2-0 week this week, really good week. They're back up at number 9. I think they fell out of my top 10 last week. They're back in it. At number 10, I do have Iowa State, and this just goes to show how crazy and deep the Big 12 conference really does run. So listen to Iowa State's week, right? Early on in the week, they lose on the road at Texas Tech by blowing a 20-plus point lead to a team in the Big 12 that was yet to get a conference win. That was their first conference win, was defeating Iowa State. And then they go back home and beat Kansas by nearly 15 points or so. So that is insane. Like, the Big 12 is so deep and chaotic. Everybody's beating everyone, and that is why I still have Iowa State here at number 10, because of that big win over Kansas. So Iowa State sitting here at 10 even after blowing a crazy lead to Texas Tech early in the week. I mean, college basketball is super chaotic right now, and honestly, it's super fun to watch. I'm loving it right now. Every single game has been super fun. But ranking them has been, it takes a lot of time to decipher these teams because it's that chaotic. But at number 11, we do have Kansas, and they're another team that had an up and down week this week. They were at home at Allen Fieldhouse, destroyed Kansas State in a statement win. You're like, okay, here comes Kansas. They're ready to take over the Big 12 now. Then they go on the road to Ames, which, mind you, Ames has been one of the toughest places to play, not only in the Big 12, but in all of college basketball this season. And they drop that one and lose by more than 10. So up and down again for Kansas. They're right there with Iowa State at number 11. At number 12, we do have Virginia. They took a loss this week to their rivals, Virginia Tech, on the road. So they're dropping out of my top 10 this week, down to number 12. Still think Virginia's a very solid team. They were on a nice little win streak there for a while. That's a tough loss for them. At number 13, we do have St. Mary's. And St. Mary's, another team, I think the only team, one of the only teams there, along with Alabama, who's still undefeated in conference play. Undefeated in the West Coast Conference, and it's not just them and Gonzaga. There are a lot of really good teams in the West Coast Conference. St. Mary's deserves a lot of praise because they did defeat Gonzaga in overtime this week, and that was a really fun game to watch. St. Mary's up at 13 this week. At number 14, we do have Kansas State. Like I said earlier, the Big 12 is a very tough league, and Kansas State had an 0-2 week this week. So they fall out of the top 10 and down to 14 this week after taking L's to Kansas and also Texas. Next up, we do have at number 15, jumping up I think 3 or 4 spots from next week. Even though they had a 1-1 week, they did defeat my number one team from last week, the Purdue Boilermakers, and that is Indiana jumping up to 15 this week. They did lose to Maryland on the road earlier in the week, but Maryland has been on a nice little win streak as of late. Indiana still doesn't have Xavier Johnson back, so that plays a factor as well. And playing Maryland is a tough environment, especially when they get on a little win streak. So that's not an easy place to play. They bounced back from that, defeated the number one team in the country at home, and they deserve to be up at 15 this week. At number 16, we do have Gonzaga dropping down to 16 because they lost to St. Mary's. I still think Gonzaga is a pretty good team. Not as good as, the past few Gonzaga teams the past few years, but they still have a very solid squad, and they did take St. Mary's to overtime on the road. So I still think, not a horror, that could be a lot worse of a loss. I'm not going to drop Gonzaga too much because St. Mary's is a very, very good team. At number 17, we do have Xavier, and Xavier is a team that did lose to my number 15 and my number 16, so it makes sense that they come in here at number 17, especially because they lost those games in very, very close fashion. But Xavier's been playing good. They got a really good win over Providence in a super close game this week. Definitely a much-needed win there for Xavier. At number 18, we do have TCU, and TCU had a 1-1 week, which honestly, not that bad considering they didn't have their star player Mike Miles in those two games. Beat West Virginia at home, then lost to Oklahoma State. So the fact that they were still able to get a win even without Mike Miles, very impressive in the tough Big 12 conference. They're still here at 18. They did drop, a few spots here, but they're still in the top 20. At number 19, we do have Providence, and again, a lot like Xavier, the two teams in front of Providence did beat them, and that in TCU and Xavier, so it makes sense they come in here at number 19. Of course, they did lose to Xavier this week. At number 20, look at who's crawling in the top 20 this week. We do have NC State. NC State is a team, I think they're on a 4 or 5 game win streak now in the ACC conference. They got some good wins this week, and they are in the top 20, and NC State is setting themselves up perfectly to be a 5 seed that loses to a 12 seed in the first round. At number 21, we do have the UConn Huskies, and UConn back in the top 25 this week, had a 2-0 week, although they did face Georgetown and DePaul, which I'm pretty sure almost everyone in this top 35 would probably have a 2-0 week against, but you still, a 2-0 week is a 2-0 week, especially when everybody else is losing, and the beginning of the season really did help UConn because they have some really good wins on their resume, so they're jumping up here back into the top 25 at number 21. At number 22, we do have the Duke Blue Devils, another team who took a pretty big jump this week because of a lot of teams falling out of my rankings due to taking bad losses this week. So Duke is back in the top 25 at 22. Not only did they defeat North Carolina this week, but they also defeated Wake Forest. So those are two really good wins there in the ACC for Duke. They're up at 22. At number 23, we do have USC, a third Pac-12 team in the top 25. I never thought I would see the day, but they had a really good week this week. I think they deserve it. They're up here at 23. At number 24, we do have the Miami Hurricanes, and Miami, they were a team that I think they fell out of my top 35 last week, but they had a really good week, a really good week, 2-0 week. They're back in it here at 24. At number 25, we do have Rutgers. See, a lot of these teams, either weren't in my top 35 last week or were towards the bottom of it, making big jumps this week, and that includes Rutgers. They're up at 25, 2-0 week this week, including a win over Michigan State. Rutgers playing really good basketball this week, and they have a good one coming up next week against Illinois. That should be a really good game. determine a lot there. At number 26, look who decided to join us back in the Power 35. It has been a good amount of weeks since we've gotten to see the Creighton Blue Jays back in the Dannyology Power 35 rankings. And not only are they back in the Power 35, but they are all the way up at here at 26. They just continue to win and win and win, and they have some good matchups set up this weekend. So if they have another 2-0 week this week, Creighton is setting themselves up to climb the rankings even more. Right behind them, we do have Arkansas. Also had a nice 2-0 week this week, and a team that, lost to Creighton in a very close game early on in the season on a neutral site court, come in right behind Creighton here at 27. At number 28, we do have the Kentucky Wildcats, and Kentucky, building themselves a nice little win streak. If it wasn't for the loss there to Kansas, they would be on a really big win streak. So Kentucky's playing good basketball right now. They're here up at 28. Similarly to Kentucky, we do have Maryland, who is on a nice little win streak. I believe a 4-game win streak in the Big 12, defeated Indiana this week, and I'm pretty sure they blew out Minnesota this week by like 40 points. So Maryland playing really good. They're back in the Power 35. At number 30, we do have North Carolina. They're actually dropping out of my top 25 down to 30 after their loss to Duke. At number 31, we do have Florida Atlantic. And Florida Atlantic, they were a team that was in my top 20, but they took a loss, and it's tough to drop them so far. But when you don't play that many good teams and then you take a loss, you have to fall. But I did keep them in my Power 35. If they can keep winning, don't let this loss get to them. They can climb back up. At number 32, we do have Nevada, and that is one of 3 of my Mountain West teams I have ranked here right in a row almost. Nevada's coming in at 32. They had a really good week at home over San Diego State this week, and I think they are on a 3-game win streak now in the Mountain West, one of those including another home win over New Mexico in, I think, double overtime. That was a really good win. They have to return that game this week. They have to travel to New Mexico to face them on the road, so that's going to set up a really good matchup between my number 32 and number 33 team, as New Mexico is right behind them here at 33. At number 34, we do have Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State had a 2-0 week this week, including beating TCU, and I know they didn't have Mike Miles, but TCU still has a lot of other really good players on that team. Still a very impressive win for Oklahoma State, and the other win included sweeping Bedlam on the season, 2-0 against Oklahoma on the year. Really good by Oklahoma State. They're in here at 34, and at 35, the team that Nevada beat this week, San Diego State. And San Diego State, they have some really good matchups coming up this week, one including against Utah State, who has been really, really hot lately as well. So the Mountain West is looking really good. They get 3 teams in here towards the bottom. We'll see which one of these teams, can have a 2-0 week and maybe crawl into not only the top 30, but maybe even the top 25 next week. Teams to watch that might make the Power 35 rankings next week. West Virginia, I was debating, them, Oklahoma State. Well, West Virginia did lose to TCU this week. They did destroy Oklahoma, but WVU won 3 of their last 4 games. But they did lose the one matchup they had against Oklahoma State this year, so that caused Oklahoma State to get in over West Virginia. Then we have Auburn. Auburn took another loss this week, although to Tennessee. They're still in my teams to watch, just like they were last week. Iowa is a team to watch. Iowa and Illinois, they actually played each other last week, and Iowa won in a very close game at home. Both of those teams are on my teams to watch. They could definitely get in next week. Texas A&M. Texas A&M is a team that I really wanted to put in this week. They were in it last week. They had a 1-1 week, but like I said, they're teams to watch, so they can easily get back in next week. Missouri, another team that went 1-1 this week. They had to fall out. Memphis, a team that lost to Tulane this week in overtime. They had to fall out this week, but Missouri, Memphis, teams that could get back in the Power 35 next week. Clemson falls from my top 25 all the way completely out of my rankings this week because not only did they lose to Miami at home, which you're saying, Miami's a good team, that's not such a bad loss, but they also lost to Boston College this week. So 0-2 week, including a loss to Boston College. They're going to fall out of my rankings, especially when there's so many teams that are really looking to get back into the Power 35. So Clemson falls out, but a good week, and they could maybe get back in again. So that is going to do it for this week's Dannyology Power 35 rankings. Let me know what you guys think about them down below in the comment section. Make sure you guys subscribe if you guys are new, because we have these power rankings dropping every single Monday morning at 7 a.m. Eastern Time. And not only do we have those dropping every single week, but we have daily college basketball content dropping here on the channel. So if you guys are a college basketball fan, hit that sub button and hit that like button. And yeah, guys, thank you so much for watching.